Ben, let's say welcome to the program. And well, you've got more on democracy and how it is being dismantled.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a really good segue. Thank you, guys. Great to be here as ever. We are hearing a lot about democracy at the moment. Brian just used the term uniparty, and that's a very undemocratic thing, right? So how can these two ideas possibly be compatible with each other? I'm not sure that they can. And we're hearing a lot about threats to democracy, but I don't think that the threats are actually coming from the people we're being told they're coming from. They are coming from elsewhere, as I'll get into. Last week, we spoke about the Obama Foundation and the Democracy Forum, very grandiose event hosted by former US President Obama. And we also talked about a new organization called DemocracyNext, which is backed by the Open Societies Foundation, which is George Soros, and the Rockefeller Foundation, amongst others. Now, at the time, I presented those as separate but related organisations. So they were related by the message that they were pushing. But actually, on closer inspection this week, it turns out they are much more closely linked. I've discovered that Claudia Chalice, that's how I'm going to pronounce that name. Apologies if I'm getting that catastrophically wrong. I probably am. But Claudia Chalice, who's the founder and the CEO of DemocracyNext, is in fact an Obama leader for Europe at the Obama Foundation. Now, the Leaders for Europe program identifies emerging leaders working in government, civil society, and the private sector who've demonstrated a commitment to advancing the common good. So this is clearly a coordinated effort to push assemblies and new forms of democracies onto nation states. This is a live topic of conversation. It's actually reared its head again in London this week. I attended an event at Nesta about deliberative democracy and citizens' assemblies. This happened on Wednesday. It's called Democracy, Doing It for Ourselves, and setting up citizens' assemblies without any kind of formal remit to do so, and then publishing the opinions that come out of those assemblies, essentially as a form of lobbying. I think that's what they're promoting here. The event was hosted by Ravu Gurumurthy, who's the CEO of Nesta. It featured a keynote by a gentleman called Nicholas Gruen, who's an Australian academic and CEO of something called the Lateral Economics. And there was a panel including Martin Wolf, who's the chief economist at the FT. He's been there for a very long time, very well-established fella. Worth noting that the FT is part of Nikkei Group, and Nikkei is a World Economic Forum partner, useful to know. And also a lady called Claire Mellier, who is the knowledge lead at something called the ISWI Foundation. Again, another one of these sort of non-profit, non-partisan type organizations promoting these ideas. And she was also, very interestingly, an initiator of the United Nations COP26 climate change conference. She actually described that as a global citizens' assembly. So they actually think that they've been doing this in practice already for a number of years now. A little bit more about Nesta, for those who aren't familiar with it. It has been covered on the column quite a bit previously. It's the National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts. It was established in 1998. It's a legacy of the first Blair government. It was seed funded with £250 million from the National Lottery, and based on their published accounts, they've got about 500 million still in the pot, which they're using in a whole number of ways. They describe themselves as an innovation partner, a venture builder, and a system shaper, interestingly, focused on all the things that you would expect them to be focused on. And I've got a little video here to run, which will give you some more background.
The UK faces major challenges: climate change, inequality, ill health. All of these problems can seem overwhelming. But we believe it's possible to meet these challenges through innovation. That's the creation of new and better solutions. We believe that through new products, new services, new business models, and new policies, meaningful change is possible. We are Nesta, the UK's innovation agency for social good. We design new solutions, test them rigorously, and help them to spread nationwide. How? By bringing our teams of designers, data scientists, and behavioural scientists to work with partners across the public and private sector, from local authorities and nurseries to supermarkets and energy companies, by harnessing the power of the arts to understand social problems and design solutions, by building new companies from scratch and investing in early stage ones, by looking at what gets in the way of innovation and unblocking it. We push the boundaries of what's possible. We're on a mission to reduce education inequality in early childhood, ensuring all babies and toddlers have a fairer start in life, an equal chance to thrive. We are on a mission to make healthy eating easier and more accessible in schools, high streets, workplaces, and online, helping more people live a healthy life for longer. We are on a mission to reduce global warming by redesigning the UK's energy systems to reduce harmful pollution from households. We envision a sustainable future where people can heat their homes more efficiently, cheaply, and easily. Our vision is a better life for millions of people. We are on a journey to that different and brighter future. We are Nesta. Join us on that journey.
Okay, so a lot in there. I mean, the key points are that ideologically it's quite predictable. They're touching on all the topics you'd expect them to: climate change, inequality, ill health. And actually, on the face of it, none of this seems reasonable to argue with, right? But unfortunately, the influence of organisations like Nesta is quite nefarious, I believe. And when you look at the way that these their influence is deployed, I don't think that they're setting us in a particularly positive direction. And in order to understand that a bit better, you just need to listen to the way that they talk about things like deliberative democracy. So I suggest going to their YouTube channel, the Nesta YouTube channel, to watch the full presentation. It's just over an hour long. It's definitely worth going to have a look at. But I'm just going to show you another quick clip now from Ravi Guru Murthy to give you a sense of his view on these methods.
There's an assumption there, though, isn't there, that the process will come up with the right answer, and that when people deliberate, they suddenly become rather progressive and sensible.
And sensible, I don't equate sensible and progressive, I'm afraid. I'm much more reactionary than that.
Good. Well, but you take my point. But there is an assumption that this is a way of, when people really weigh out the issues, actually they come up with a better judgment than when they haven't deliberated. But if you take... and I think there's lots of good examples of that being the case.
Yeah.
I've been involved in one or two things on the energy side where we got people to participate in a 2050 net zero plan, and actually people come up with very, very sensible ideas, almost identical to the economist cost optimizing models that we put through in the energy department. If you
it's very easy to get people to agree on what needs to be done in 2050.
It is, but even in nearer term questions. But if you took questions that are very difficult, like the death penalty or immigration right now, would you take the risk of putting this through a citizens' assembly, or would you be fearful of the potential consequences of doing that?
So there's quite a lot in there. They obviously view these assemblies as a way to get people to come up with the right answer. And the right answer is a progressive and sensible one, right? Is this a deliberately manipulative process that they want to be putting people through? I think there's a really interesting turn of phrase there at the end. Would you take the risk of putting issues like the death penalty or immigration through a citizens' assembly? I'm guessing in case you don't get the answer that you're looking for, you'd be fearful of the consequences. He then goes on to ask Claire Mellier, the UN lady, would you use citizens' assemblies on an issue where the public are much more to the right of the political elite? Which again is a fascinating turn of phrase. First of all, that Mr. Guru Murthy believes that there is such a thing as a political elite. And I assume that he believes he's part of that. And this is an elite who knows best, who have the right answer, and that they are significantly more left-wing, all of them. And I'm assuming sensible and progressive than the general public, right? So they want to use these tools, but they only want to use them if they think that they can get the answers that they want out of them. Very, very interesting to watch these people in their natural habitat and hear what they really think about the population that they're supposed to be serving. That's not just in the UK either, by the way. They actually operate Nesta across Asia and the Commonwealth. And really interestingly, they are now the owners of the Behavioural Insights Team, also known as the UK government's Nudge Unit, which UK column readers and viewers will be very familiar with. So Nudge was described by David Halpern, who was the founder of the Nudge Unit, as being particularly linked to Harvard professor Cass Sunstein. Sunstein, author of, amongst other things, Conspiracy Theories and Other Dangerous Ideas, and Democracy and the Problem of Free Speech, which puts the Nesta event about democracy into an interesting context, I think. So far, so terrifying. Halpern himself, he's a fascinating character. He was the chief analyst in Tony Blair's strategy unit at Number 10 between 2001 and 2007, involved in all of the New Labour policy work at the time. He then left to set up the Institute for Government. He was involved in the writing of the Mindspace paper. He then took this back into Number 10 and helped to establish the Nudge Unit. If you look at his profile here on the Institute for Government website, it gives a very fascinating look at what he was up to just over a decade ago. Really, it's just like a timeline of how this stuff has developed and how it's been embraced into the status quo. And they are absolutely everywhere. They aren't just working with government. They're working in the private sector as well. For example, with Meta, formerly known as Facebook, who've been running a series of events, a whole sequence of activity looking at deliberative democracy. I don't know why Meta would be interested or involved in deliberative democracy, but apparently they are, and they're paying the Behavioural Insights team a lot of money to do it. Keir Starmer's considering introducing these ideas into the Labour manifesto. So he's been talking about reforming the House of Lords. Unclear exactly how he would want to do that, but there was some discussion about the idea of replacing the Lords with a citizens' assembly. In particular, they want to get rid of those nasty old bishops, the Lords Spiritual, I think that they're called. Is that right? I think it's right. They're certainly not temporal. What else? Nesta and BIT, they're doing some big things. They're being asked big questions by the state right now. So earlier on this year, they launched a program called UK 2040 Options. This is sponsored by Lord Gus O'Donnell, the former civil servant, formerly known as God, because of his initials. And this program is going to be publishing policy statements in a number of key areas, whether that's about economic growth, health, technology, education, net zero, wealth and income inequality, tax and public finances, power and place. And obviously, deliberative democracy is going to factor into that if Nesta and these people have anything to do with it. And also, really interestingly, as a final point on this, behavioural insights are being used. I mean, we've certainly used throughout the pandemic, but they're still being embraced today by the NHS. And we've just seen an announcement from Public Health Wales over the past week that they've joined a new behavioural research hub. So we can expect to see the use of these techniques in the health system increase as time goes on.
Okay, Ben, thank you very much for that. Well, if we summarise it a bit, we've got a lot of completely unaccountable people making policy to change our lives in the future in all sorts of ways. And of course, much of it is behavioural change. That is one network system which is going on across the country.